This video will explain how glazing works in watercolors. Glazing is a technique where you layer different washes, basically painting them on top of each other. If you haven't seen my watercolor wash technique video yet, the link will be in the description box below. For this project, you will need the following: a watercolor set, a round brush, a water container with water, some paper towel for blotting your brush, a piece of watercolor paper, painter's tape, and a pen or pencil for taking notes. First, we'll use the painter's tape to divide our paper into 3 columns, leaving space for notes at the top and bottom. Our first glazing technique is wet into wet glaze. Wet into wet glaze is when you apply a wash over top of another wash while it is still wet. This creates soft edges between your different washes. Here you can see I'm covering the space with one wash first, then adding a wash of another hue over top. I recommend using hues that are quite different so you can see the effect of the technique more clearly. Next, we have wet on dry glaze, using the same color. This technique applies a wash of the same color over top of a dry wash to increase its value, essentially darkening the wash. Start off by painting different shapes into the space. This technique requires a bit of patience as you will need to wait for your first layer of paint to dry. Once it is dry, you can paint another layer over top. Here you can see I'm layering different shapes and lines. I would recommend doing at least 3 different layers to see the full effect. I was a bit impatient and didn't wait for the glaze to dry completely on the triangle before adding more layers, so you can see that the layers have blended together. Our last technique for this video is wet on dry glaze, using different colors. This technique applies a wash of a different color over top of a dry wash, changing the color of the wash. I chose to use primary colors so you can see the color change more obviously, but you can choose any 3 colors you want. You might notice that even after the watercolors have dried, painting over them reactivates the color underneath. It's important to be aware of how your watercolors behave so you don't get caught off guard when making art.